My name is Thomas Harder. I'm a conference interpreter and a literary translator. As a translator, I translate books from English and Italian into Danish, and as a conference interpreter, I work between Danish and English and Italian, and from German and Swedish into mainly Danish, but also sometimes into Italian and English, even though it's easier for me going into Danish from those languages. Some people will tell you that there's a great difference between being a translator and an interpreter. That they're two completely different disciplines, two completely different professions performed by completely different people. In many respects, of course, they're right, but still I tend to disagree. I do both, and I find that the two things help each other, or they help me. One thing helps me doing the other and vice versa. When you translate a book, you want to produce a text in your target language which is as close and faithful a rendition of the original as possible. And by that I mean that you want to bring across the whole content of the book, the meaning, if you are able to guess or find out what the meaning is, or you want to leave it as open for interpretation by the reader as the original was. You also want to reflect the style of the original. If the original is funny or not funny or very serious or has a particular style, if the author uses dialect, makes jokes or puns or quotes literature or quotes classics or quotes Donald Duck or whatever, you want to do the same thing in your target language, or maybe not exactly the same thing, but something which works in the same way. I think that when you work as an interpreter, you want to do the same thing. You want to bring across the speaker's oral text as faithfully as possible. But of course you do it under completely different circumstances. When I work as a translator at home, I can ask my wife, who is working in the room next door doing practically the same kind of work, or I can look at dictionaries, I can telephone people who know more than I do about whatever it may be. I can use Google or other internet services to find information I need, and I can correct myself. I can go out to my kitchen, make a cup of tea, come back, have a better idea, and when I look at the text tomorrow, I can change things, or when I see the proofs, I can correct what I did a month ago. And there'll be an editor, there may be even a proofreader who will look at my text, and there are all kinds of ways it can be improved as time moves along. When I work as an interpreter, of course I can't do that. In some cases, if I really have to, I can correct myself in all sorts of clever ways, or maybe not so elegant ways if it's really necessary. But basically, whatever I do, I have to do right now, and that's that. Once I've said it, and I can't change it. I don't have much time for the use of dictionaries. Some colleagues bring dictionaries along, or long lists of terminology, but I rarely see them used. They are mostly sort of for good luck, or because you know if you don't have them you will need them, but if you do have them you rarely have time to look anything up. Sometimes you can, and it's useful. It's also useful to have the documents people in the meeting may be talking about in various languages, and it's useful to have been able to prepare yourself for the meeting, knowing beforehand what people may be talking about, looking into terminology, trying to understand the subject. Because when you understand what people are saying, it's much easier translating or interpreting. You can do it without understanding what they're saying, but it's easier if you do. So the great difference is, I think, the conditions under which you work. You have to make decisions right now when you are an interpreter, whereas you can let it sort of simmer and get back to it when you translate on paper. So the conditions are completely different. When you work with a book as a translator, you can work in your own home or in your office if you have one outside of the home, and you are basically alone unless you choose not to be alone and work with somebody. If you are working in a meeting as an interpreter, you're part of that meeting, sometimes very much a part, sitting at the same table as the people in the meeting. Sometimes you are sitting in an interpreter's booth and you're sort of half in, half out of the meeting, but still you learn as you go along, and what you do has an immediate impact on the meeting, even though you're not supposed to be really visible. Also, you'll very often be working with colleagues, 1, 2, 3 colleagues in the same booth, depending on the number of languages in the meeting. So you have to cooperate with people, and you have to be able to work with people next to you. To some people that's annoying, some people like that, some people don't like sitting at home working on their own, and some enjoy exactly that, don't having the bother of colleagues. And to me, and not only to me, but to many other interpreters and colleagues, it's a good combination. I like sitting at home and not having to relate to other people when I work. And I like from time to time to go out and meet other people, go to other places, see other slices of the world, and learn about things I don't read about in my books. And also I find that the two ways of working complement each other. The interpretation side trains the ability to make almost instant decisions, and it teaches you to look not at individual words, but it teaches you to look at the whole context, the meaning, so to speak, step back one pace from the text and think about what's this person trying to say. What's he or she trying to do with this text? What's the message? Not what did that word mean and what did that other word mean, and oh, I don't know that word and that's going to block me. No, what's the idea? What's the purpose? What's the message? And that's very useful when I work with a book as well, when I am able to stand back from the text and form an opinion of the general intention of the text before going into individual words. On the other hand, when I work with books and written text, I, so to speak, collect vocabulary. I go into a great deal of detail and I accumulate translations, I accumulate solutions, and I accumulate knowledge, ready-made solutions, which may be useful when I work as an interpreter. It may make it easier for me to find exactly the word I want, or if I can't find that, then find a word very much like the one I need. So to me, but not to everybody, I know that the two professions, the two disciplines help each other, and I recommend very much to anybody who is a translator to consider interpretation or vice versa.